The weight of survival. Nora Whitfield pressed her trembling fingers against the cool bathroom mirror, studying the dark circles beneath her hazel eyes that no amount of concealer could hide. 26 years old and already running on fumes. The fluorescent lights of Sterling Global Enterprises hummed overhead as she practiced her smile one more time. Tonight's annual charity auction demanded perfection, and perfection was something she could barely afford these days. Double lives and hidden struggles for 18 months. Nora had maintained an impossible balance. By day, she analyzed market trends and compiled reports as a junior analyst in Sterling's investment division. By night and every weekend, she waitressed at an all-night diner 40 minutes across town. The second job wasn't a choice, but a necessity. Her mother Grace's cancer treatments had drained their savings faster than water through a sieve. Insurance covered the basics, but the experimental therapy offering real hope cost more than Nora earned in 6 months. She smoothed her borrowed navy cocktail dress, a generous loan from her roommate who worked in fashion. The fabric felt foreign against her skin, too elegant for someone who spent most nights smelling like coffee and French fries. But tonight, she needed to blend in with executives who earned her yearly salary in a single month. The glittering Facadeli Grand Ballroom glittered with wealth and power. Crystal chandeliers worth more than her student loans cast prismatic light across marble floors. Women dripped with diamonds, while men wore watches that could fund a year of her mother's treatment. Nora accepted a glass of sparkling water from a passing waiter, her stomach too unsettled for the champagne everyone else was drinking. Whitfield. Trevor Kane appeared at her elbow, his cologne aggressive and his smile predatory. The senior analyst had been circling her for weeks with thinly veiled propositions disguised as career advice. You clean up surprisingly well. Didn't recognize you without the fluorescent office lighting washing you out. Thanks, Trevor. Nora kept her voice neutral, scanning for an escape route. Listen, I've been thinking about that Henderson account you're working on. Maybe we could discuss strategy over drinks sometime. Just the two of us. His hand landed on her lower back, proprietary and unwelcome. Before Nora could respond, a deep voice cut through the ambient chatter. Kane, doesn't the Fitzgerald presentation need your attention? The man who commanded rooms Dominic Sterling materialized beside them like a thunderstorm given human form. At 38, he possessed the kind of presence that made people straighten their spines and choose their words carefully. Dark hair touched with distinguished silver at the temples, storm grey eyes that missed nothing, and a jaw that looked carved from granite. 3 years Nora had worked here, and she'd maybe exchanged 20 words directly with him. He existed in a different stratosphere, unreachable and untouchable. Trevor's hand vanished from her back instantly. Mr. Sterling. Yes, sir. I was just heading that direction. He disappeared into the crowd with the speed of someone who just dodged a bullet. Dominic turned his full attention to Nora, and she felt the impact like a physical force. Miss Whitfield, I trust you're enjoying the evening. Cracks in the armor, it's beautiful. Mr. Sterling, you've outdone yourself. The words came out steadier than she felt. Her vision swam slightly at the edges, the room too warm and too bright. Are you all right? His brow furrowed, genuine concern replacing his usual controlled expression. You look pale. I'm fine. Just a little tired from. The room tilted sideways without warning. Nora's glass slipped from nerveless fingers, crystal shattering against marble with a sound that seemed to echo forever. The false chandeliers began spinning, their light fragmenting into kaleidoscope patterns. Nora felt her knees buckle, her body surrendering to exhaustion that had been building for months. She was falling, the crowd around her gasping in collective shock, faces blurring into meaningless smears of color. Then strong arms caught her mid-collapse. The world stopped spinning for one perfect moment. She felt solid warmth, the expensive fabric of a tuxedo jacket against her cheek, and the heartbeat steady as a drum beneath her ear. Someone was holding her, had broken her fall, was keeping her safe. I've got you. Dominic Sterling's voice rumbled through his chest, fierce and protective. Someone called the paramedics. Now. Darkness and Dreamschnurrer tried to speak, to apologize for causing a scene, but darkness was already pulling her under like a riptide. The last thing she registered was being lifted effortlessly, cradled against a chest that felt like sanctuary, and the scent of cedar, and something uniquely masculine that made her feel inexplicably safe despite everything falling apart around her. Consciousness faded to black, but somewhere in that darkness, she felt arms that refused to let her go, and a voice that kept repeating her name, a prayer he was afraid wouldn't be answered. Awakening in unexpected arms, consciousness returned in fragments, like puzzle pieces assembling themselves slowly. Soft leather beneath her, the subtle scent of cedar and amber, warmth surrounding her like a cocoon. Nora's eyes fluttered open to find herself cradled in Dominic Sterling's arms, her head resting against his shoulder as he sat in a high-backed chair. His tuxedo jacket was draped over her like a blanket, his bow tie undone and hanging loose around his collar. "Easy," he murmured when she tried to sit up, his arms tightening reflexively. "The paramedics checked you over. You're physically fine, but you need rest and proper nutrition." Nora became acutely aware of how intimate their position was. She was practically in his lap, his hands splayed protectively across her back, her fingers somehow clutching the fabric of his shirt. Heat flooded her cheeks. "How long was I unconscious?" 23 minutes. Dominic's jaw tightened. 23 minutes where I didn't know if you were seriously ill or just exhausted or something worse. Walls crumbling down should move. Put professional distance between them. But his arms felt like the safest place she'd been in months. "I'm sorry for causing such a scene. Everyone must think. I don't care what anyone thinks." His voice was rough velvet. "When did you last eat a proper meal?" Nora. The use of her first name sent unexpected warmth through her chest. "Yesterday morning, I think. Maybe the morning before." Time gets blurry when you're working doubles. Dominic's expression darkened. "Doubles? You're working a second job?" It wasn't really a question, more like pieces of a puzzle clicking into place behind those intelligent grey-eyed dots. Nora knew she should lie, maintain the professional facade, pretend everything was fine. Instead, bone-deep exhaustion made her honest. Weekend shifts at the Starlight Diner in Riverside. Sometimes weeknights when they're short-staffed. The pay isn't much, but they let me take home leftover food, and every dollar counts. The truth spills out why. The single word held volumes of confusion, and something that sounded dangerously like anger, though not directed at her. "My mother has stage 3 ovarian cancer." The words tumbled out now, a dam breaking. Standard treatment wasn't working, but there's an experimental immunotherapy trial at Mercy General that's showing real promise. Insurance won't cover it because it's not approved yet. The trial costs $43,000 for 6 months of treatment, and I've saved almost $18,000 so far, which means I just need to hold on a little longer, work a little harder, sleep a little less. Her voice cracked, and suddenly she was crying. Great heaving sobs she'd been holding back for months. Dominic pulled her closer, one hand stroking her hair while he made soothing sounds that somehow made her cry harder. "I'm sorry," she gasped between sobs. "This is so unprofessional. You shouldn't have to stop apologizing." Dominic's voice was firm but gentle. "You've been carrying this alone for how long?" 18 months since the diagnosis. Unexpected confession. She was quiet for a moment, just holding her while she collected herself. When she finally looked up at him, his expression held something she couldn't quite identify. Admiration, wonder, something deeper that made her breath catch. "I've been watching you, Nora," Dominic said quietly. 4 months. I've found excuses to walk past your office. I've read every report you've submitted, not because I needed to, but because I wanted to understand how your mind works. The way you analyze market patterns, the innovative solutions you propose, the way you stay late to help colleagues even when you're obviously exhausted. Nora stared at him, certain she'd misheard. "Mr. Sterling." Dominic. His thumb brushed away a tear from her cheek, the gesture achingly tender. "My name is Dominic, and I need you to understand something. You're brilliant. You're wasting your potential trying to survive instead of being given the opportunity to truly thrive. An offer that changes everything. I don't understand what you're saying." Dominic took a breath. and she could see him choosing his words carefully. I'm offering you a position as Senior Strategic Advisor. It's a newly created role reporting directly to me. The salary is $270,000 annually, plus full executive benefits, stock options, and a signing bonus of $50,000. The numbers didn't make sense. Nora shook her head, trying to clear the fog. That's not possible. There are people with decades more experience. None of them are you. Dominic's voice was absolute. None of them see possibilities where others see obstacles. None of them have your instincts or your resilience or your heart. Why? The question came out as a whisper. Why would you do this for me? The dangerous truth. For a long moment, Dominic simply looked at her, his storm grey eyes searching hers. Then he did something that stopped her heart. He leaned forward and pressed his lips gently to her forehead, lingering there as he spoke against her skin. Because watching you collapse tonight made me realize I've been a coward. I've been denying what I feel because of ethics and power dynamics and professional boundaries. He pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. I've been falling for you, Nora Whitfield, and I've been too afraid of complicating your life to do anything about it. The world tilted on its axis for the second time that night. But this time it had nothing to do with exhaustion. You barely know me. Then let me learn. His hand cupped her face with devastating gentleness. Have dinner with me tomorrow night. Not as your boss, not as a business obligation, but as Dominic asking Nora if she'd like to spend an evening getting to know each other. If you want that. If the way you're looking at me right now means what I hope it means. The leap of faith. Nora's mind raced through all the reasons this was dangerous. Office relationships rarely ended well, especially with such a significant power imbalance. People would talk, make assumptions, question her competence, but looking into Dominic's eyes, seeing the vulnerability there, feeling the solid strength of his embrace, she couldn't bring herself to care about the risks. The way I'm looking at you ... double quotes, she said softly, her hand coming up to rest against his chest, where she could feel his heartbeat quicken. It terrifies me, but it's real. It's been real since the first time you smiled at me in the elevator 3 months ago and asked about the marketing proposal I was reviewing. You remember that? Dominic's smile was like sunrise. I remember everything about you, Nora admitted. How you take your coffee black with 1 sugar. How you tap your pen 3 times when you're thinking. How your eyes crinkle at the corners when you're genuinely amused versus when you're just being polite. I thought I was going crazy, noticing all these details about someone so far above my pay grade. Crossing the line, Dominic's eyes darkened with emotion. Say yes, Nora, yes to dinner. Yes to the position you've more than earned. Yes to letting someone share your burdens instead of carrying the world alone. She thought about her empty refrigerator, her mother's mounting medical bills, the exhaustion that had become her constant companion. Then she thought about the way Dominic was holding her like she was precious, the genuine concern in his voice, the careful reverence in his touch. Yes, she whispered, watching his entire face transform with joy. Yes to all of it. Dominic's hands framed her face gently. Are you absolutely certain? Once we cross this line, everything changes. Your life will be different in ways you can't predict. Nora looked into his eyes and saw her future reflected there. Not just financial security, but something she'd never dared dream of. Someone who saw her worth, who wanted to protect and cherish her, who looked at her like she was the answer to questions he'd been asking his whole life. I'm ready for different, she said firmly. I'm ready for everything to change. And when Dominic leaned down to kiss her forehead again, this time letting his lips trail slowly to her temple, her cheekbone, the corner of her mouth, Nora realized that sometimes the most beautiful love stories begin with falling apart. The only question was whether you'd fall into the right arms. When fairy tales face reality 3 weeks later, Nora stood in her new corner office, watching dawn paint the city skyline in shades of rose and gold. The transformation had been staggering. Her mother was now enrolled in the experimental treatment program, responding better than doctors had hoped. The crushing weight of financial desperation had lifted, but it was the evenings that had truly changed her world. Every night at 7, Dominic would appear at her door with that smile that made her forget how to breathe. Sometimes they'd go to quiet restaurants where he'd order wine that cost more than her old weekly salary and listen to her discuss strategic initiatives with the intensity of someone discovering hidden treasure. Other nights they'd stay at his penthouse, talking until sunrise, learning each other's histories, fears, and dreams. The first time he'd kissed her properly was on his balcony overlooking the glittering city. His hands had framed her face like she was made of starlight, his mouth soft but demanding against hers, tasting of wine and promises that made her knees weak. "I've wanted this since the moment I caught you in my arms," he'd whispered, and then kissed her again until thinking became impossible, and all that existed was the heat building between them. The storm breaks, but this morning felt different. Nora picked up the business journals the young one had left on her desk, and her blood turned to ice. There she was in full color, laughing at something Dominic had said as they left a restaurant 3 nights ago. The headline screamed, "CEO's new romance, merit or manipulation." The article was brutal. Anonymous sources questioned her qualifications. Colleagues speculated about whether she'd been promoted before or after the relationship began. The writer painted her as either a calculating gold digger or a naive young woman being used by a powerful man. Every insecurity she'd buried came roaring back to life. Her office door opened without warning. Dominic entered, his usual confident stride faltering when he saw her expression. "You've seen it, hard to miss." Nora's voice sounded hollow, even to her own ears. "They're calling me your mistress, Dominic, saying I slept my way into this position, that you promoted me because you wanted me in your bed, not your boardroom." Doubt's poisonous whispered a minute crossed the room in 3 strides, reaching for her, but she stepped back. The hurt that flashed across his face was immediate and devastating, but she couldn't let him touch her right now. If he touched her, she'd lose her resolve. "Nora, you can't believe what they're saying. You earned this position. You were on my shortlist for promotion 2 months before we ever had our first dinner. Was I?" She heard the edge in her own voice. "Or did you just want me close enough to seduce? Look at the optics, Dominic. I collapse at a company event, wake up in your arms, and 3 weeks later, I'm making $250,000 a year. How does that look to everyone else?" His jaw tightened, a muscle jumping beneath his skin. "It looks like I recognized exceptional talent and acted on it. Since when do you care what other people think? Since those other people are questioning my competence." Nora's voice rose. "Since my colleagues are whispering behind my back that I'm your pet project. Since every piece of work I submit will be scrutinized not for its merit, but for evidence that I'm sleeping with the boss to get ahead." The Grand gestured. Dominic stared at her for a long moment, something breaking behind his eyes. Then he pulled out his phone and dialed with sharp, angry movements. "James, I need you to draft a resignation letter, effective immediately." Nora's heart stopped. "Dominic, what are you doing?" He held up one finger, still speaking into the phone. "No, I'm not joking. I'm stepping down as CEO of Sterling Global Enterprises. Have the board convene an emergency meeting this afternoon. I'll explain everything then." He ended the call and turned to her with an intensity that made her knees weak. "What am I doing?" His voice was controlled fury barely leashed. "I'm proving this isn't about power or manipulation or corporate games. I'm choosing you over the company my grandfather built, over my reputation, over everything that's supposed to matter. You can't resign because of me." Nora felt panic rising in her chest. "This company is your life, your legacy." "No." Dominic closed the distance between them, his hands framing her face with desperate tenderness. "You're my life. You're the woman who makes me laugh until my ribs hurt, who challenges my thinking, who looks at me like I'm just Dominic, not CEO Sterling or billionaire Sterling or any of the other labels people attach to me. Everything else is just noise." Love's declaration bore. She could protest. His mouth was on hers, fierce and claiming. Nora melted into him, despite everything, her hands fisting in his shirt, as he kissed her with the passion of a man who had everything to lose and didn't care. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. "I love you, Dominic said against her lips. Not your potential, not your usefulness to the company. You, the woman who steals my shirts and looks better in them than I do, who argues with me about market projections over breakfast, who holds me when the pressure gets too heavy and reminds me why any of this matters. Tears streamed down Nora's face. I love you too, God. I love you so much it scares me, but I can't let you destroy everything you've built. Then fight for us, he urged, his forehead pressed against hers. Don't let them take this away. Don't let fear win. My resignation can be withdrawn if you'll have dinner with me tonight as my girlfriend, not my employee. You're insane, she whispered, but she was smiling through her tears, insanely in love with a brilliant woman who's too good for me, but hopefully foolish enough to keep me anyway. The board decides 4 hours later. Nora sat in the boardroom watching Dominic address 12 very concerned board members. He'd outlined the situation with characteristic directness, offered his resignation, and now waited for their response. The silence stretched until Beatrice Morgan, a formidable woman in her 70s who'd been with the company for 40 years, cleared her throat. Dominic, you're being absurd. I'm being principled, he countered. You're being dramatic, Beatrice corrected. We're not accepting your resignation over tabloid gossip and workplace whispers. Miss Whitfield's work speaks for itself. Her analysis of the Carmichael merger saved this company $30 million. Her strategy for the Asian markets opened opportunities we'd been trying to crack for 5 years. I don't care who she's dating as long as she keeps producing results like that. Nora felt heat flood her face. But Beatrice continued. As for you, Dominic, you're the best CEO this company has had since your grandfather. If you want to date your strategic advisor, that's between you and HR. Now stop being melodramatic and get back to work. The other board members nodded agreement. Another executive, Gerald Shue, added, though perhaps we should update the disclosure forms. Transparency would shut down most of this gossip. There is one condition, Beatrice added, her eyes twinkling despite her stern expression. The next time you decide to resign in a fit of romantic passion, give us more than 4 hours' notice. Some of us had to cancel very important lunch meetings. The aftermath that evening, Nora and Dominic sat on his penthouse balcony, sharing Thai food and a bottle of wine that probably cost more than her old monthly rent. The city sprawled below them like a carpet of stars. Any regrets? She asked, tucked against his side with his jacket draped over her shoulders. Only that I didn't catch you sooner. Dominic pressed a kiss to her hair. Though I have to admit, Beatrice Morgan terrifies me a little. She likes you. That's the highest praise possible from her. Nora tilted her head up to meet his gaze. So, Mr. Sterling, now that we've survived our first scandal, what's next? Well, Miss Whitfield, he said, his smile soft with love and promise. I was thinking we could start with me not having a heart attack the next time you skip meals. Practical, she laughed. I like a man with realistic goals. As he leaned down to kiss her under the stars, Nora realized that sometimes love stories don't follow the script. Sometimes they begin with fainting and catching, with vulnerability and strength, with choosing each other despite the complications and the whispers and the world telling you it's all wrong. The newspaper article became a footnote. What mattered was that they'd chosen each other, fought for each other, and built something real despite every obstacle. 6 months later, when Dominic proposed on that same balcony where they'd shared their first real kiss, Nora said yes without hesitation. Not because he was wealthy or powerful or could give her security, but because he was the man who'd caught her when she fell and spent every day since proving that some risks are worth taking. Some love stories start with fairy tale balls. This started with a feint and a catch, which turned out to be exactly perfect for them. And when Grace Whitfield walked her daughter down the aisle a year later, cancer-free and beaming, Nora knew that sometimes falling down to the most beautiful beginnings, especially when you fall into the right arms,